for presenting and welcome.
You want me to go? So I'm Nancy Johnson-Casulo. I'm the HR director here at the college. I've been in human resources for just about 30 years. I'm not a C of I alum, but I'm a Nampa native. But I've been at the college for 5 years and trying to be very connected, and I really enjoy working with students, so I was very excited to be offered this. I'll turn it over to Doug because I'll tell you kind of my story of negotiation and what you shouldn't do as part of my little presentation.
Yeah, so Doug Brigham, and really excited to be one of the co-presidents here at the college, and looking forward to those of you that I haven't met to getting a chance to meet you guys. My background is I was 87 grad of the college, had a business degree. I had 2 offers my senior year. One was from a financial institution, and the other was from an international engineering construction. Both offers came from College of Idaho connections. So the one I actually turned down, and to the question earlier, I had accepted the offer and was about a week from starting it when I got the other offer. And I think I did the right thing because the person I turned down turned out to be the chairman of the board of trustees at the College of Idaho a number of years later, and I guess I didn't burn any bridges because ultimately he was the one that nominated me to be chairman of the board 2 people after him. So make sure you don't burn those bridges. The job I actually accepted was with a company called Morrison Knudsen, an international engineering and construction company, and that came from an adjunct professor that I had. He was teaching a finance class and worked in their finance department and hired me right out of college. So I did 20 years at Morrison Knudsen, which became Washington Group. A lot of different positions. I was corporate controller, I was corporate treasurer, business unit CFO, and then ultimately ran some operations, traveled internationally a lot, too much at the end, which is why I left there and actually bought into a small company. I had a little bit of an entrepreneurial streak that I wanted to satisfy, and got into a company called Title I, which is a small title and escrow company in the Boise Valley. We'd moved around a lot in my previous job, came back here and had an opportunity to do that. And then a few months ago, got convinced to apply for the College of Idaho co-president role, and some or all of you probably heard a little bit about that, so I won't hit on that. But anyway, that's my quick background. I'll let Nancy talk about negotiating.
So, number one, if you're going to apply for a job at the College of Idaho, I don't want you to listen to this part because I don't want you to negotiate. But if you're going to apply anywhere else, pay attention. So my story is I always wanted to be a dance professional. Unfortunately, I'm too short and too wide to fit that model, so I became a business major. My background was working in a dental office in high school and a physical therapy clinic while I was going to school. That gave me the benefits background, so that's kind of how I ended up in human resources. When I graduated, I didn't want to stay in the Boise Valley, so I looked to the Seattle area where I had a lot of friends. And back then, that was before you had online job posting sites. So I scoured the classified ads of the major newspapers, read the business journal for the top 25 countries, and just basically sent out blanket cold call cover letters and resumes, wondering if they had a job. So I got called for a small university over in the Bellevue area of Seattle and went over, interviewed for them, came back. They called and said, "We'd really love to have you." I said, "Great, I want to be there. When do I show up?" And then I found out what the salary was. It was $13,000. Okay, that was back in 1989. And I was like, well, that's cool. That's probably a lot of money. What I didn't realize was the cost of living in Seattle. So the cost of an apartment was, at that time, around $600 to $700, and the commute. So I was used to driving from Nampa to Boise for a job, but I was not used to driving in Seattle where it was 30 minutes to an hour to get anywhere. So it was very shocking and eye-opening for me, so I hope that I can share what I did wrong so that you'll go into the situation of what you accept and what to ask so that you'll be more successful in that. So the important thing about negotiation is it starts from the day you are writing your resume and your cover letter, because that's where you're telling your story. So when they were talking about, how to articulate what your successes, what your experiences, go to the CEL, go out to their website, fill out all these pieces of paper. They're awesome. I send people to our website all the time, and I'm not talking students, I'm talking friends, family, whoever wants to know how to do it. We've got great resources out there for you. Use those action verbs. You're telling your story about what makes you qualified for the job, but that's also what makes you qualified for your offer of salary. Same thing when you're going into the interview. Practice those interviewing skills. Have down, your responses for what your successes were, what your failures were, what you learned from them. Have questions, because that shows that you're interested, you're prepared, and that, again, is going to help you with what the offer is. If they've got a range, if you show more skills that are applicable, you're going to get an offer that's higher up in the range. What most HR professionals or hiring managers do is typically offer you 85 to 90% of what their top salary might be. So there's potentially room for negotiation. Now, looking at our situation here at the college, that isn't always the case. We may have a salary, and that's all we have to offer. But we will tell you that based on our job posting here. So we always post a starting range up to a maximum. As a new graduate, you may or may not have the experience to warrant that highest salary. So be prepared to go into a job that you're not going to make $100,000 right out of the gate. You may make something more like 20, 30, 50. But an example that I have is one of my friend's daughters graduated from Washington State last year. She was a biology major, wanted to go into research. She interviewed with a small seed company in Nampa and kind of went away and went, no, I don't think that's really what I want to do. Nampa's a little small. I want to kind of be Pacific Northwest, Portland, Seattle. They called and offered her the job, and she thought, well, I don't really want to take it. Thought about it, and counteroffered for a salary that was $20,000 more, thinking they would turn her down, and they accepted her counteroffer. She came here, and then she realized, this is great. I don't have a commute. They were actually flexible in the hours she could work. She adores her job. So don't be afraid to ask, but do it in a manner that's respectful and appropriate. So you don't want to go into a negotiation thinking you have to be overly aggressive or demanding, because that's going to turn off the person on the other end, whether it's the hiring manager or the HR person. But think about when you get that offer, ask for time to think about it. That shows you don't rush into making judgments. That's a good business decision. But also don't ask for, can I have a month? Can I have a week? Can I have 3 days? Something of that nature. Or just say, I really want to think about this offer. Maybe you have that second offer that's out there, or you have that second job you've applied for and you need time to follow up. Just make sure that you're doing that quickly, and ask for the offer in writing. Because oftentimes you'll do what I did, which was, I want the job. Sure, I'll take it. And then you find out the salary or the terms, you've already accepted the job. Get it, make sure you're right. What if it's based on commission? They tell you, well, you'll make up to $50,000 a year, but that up to means your base salary is 20, and you've got to earn that other 30,000 through number of sales or percentage of profit, something. So get all those terms in writing. You'll find out what the benefits are. Maybe you've got a great salary, but you're going to pay a whole lot to have health insurance. Or maybe you get vacation, but you don't get it until you've been with the company 2 years, and that's important to you. So if you get that offer up front, then you've got time to really think about it. It takes that emotion and excitement out and lets you make the best decision for you. And you have to think about what's important to you. Is getting a specific title most important? Is working for a specific company most important? Is the amount of paid time off that you have? Is it really the salary? Is it the experience that you're going to get or the career progression that you might have with that company? You have to kind of think of all those things and come up with what your priorities are, what's their offer, and what are you willing to give up, or what aren't you willing to give up? And then you have to kind of present your case if you're going to go back and negotiate. I really appreciate the offer you've given me based on my experience of X, Y, and Z. You know, I think that I am worth X dollar amount. Or I absolutely, in order to get there, I need moving expenses. Or am I going to get a signing bonus? Or, maybe you just have to find out more what's the cost of living in the area before you can make the decision. Or you find out what that cost of living is and you go, gosh, for me, I really need X amount of dollars in order to be there. So you can kind of do those negotiations back and forth. Worst case that they can say is, I'm sorry, we can't meet that offer, and then you have to make a decision. Do I accept what they originally offered, or do I gracefully pass, because we're not going to burn our bridges, and wait till something else comes up that might fit your need, potentially with that company, potentially with another company. So you've kind of got those options. The other thing to do is when you're interviewing, go out to the new alumni page that's rolled out. Look at the mentors that are out there. Look at connecting with alumni in the industry you want to be in. Work for the company you want to work for. Live in the city that you're going to interview. Reach out to them. They've already said, I want to talk to those C of I students or recent graduates, and pick their brain. What is the cost of living? What is it like to work for this company? What's the standard salary for someone coming into this position at your company or this position in general in the industry? Get their information, because then you can use that as part of your negotiation. And maybe they know somebody at the company that's going to help you kind of progress through. You can look at salary job sites, but you have to keep in mind that the title may be different. The duties may not be an exact match. Typically, they're giving you a salary that's a compilation of inexperienced people to really experienced people. So what you see as the market salary isn't per se what you're going to make walking in the door. So you want to consider all those options, but talking to people that do the job or have the connection with the company, that's going to help you the most, I think.
Yeah, great stuff. So I'm probably the worst person to be on a panel for negotiating.
Did you negotiate your most recent job?
Not very well. So I'm 6 days now into a new job that one of the first things that Jim Everett and I did was talk to the search committee and say, gee, we each want half the salary. That's probably not a great spot for all of you to start. Ours was a little different situation, so we didn't negotiate at all on salary, and we also said, you know what, we realized that employment contracts are kind of typical for a college president, and we said, we don't want one. If you don't like us, let us go. We don't need a contract. If we're not cutting it, then that's probably best for everybody to go our separate ways. So that's a long way of saying I'm not any good at it, so I probably shouldn't be up here for that. But I'm going to take a slightly different tack to this, and I guess my advice for you guys from a negotiating standpoint, and I agree with everything that Nancy said earlier, I'm a huge believer in looking for company and looking for people. So when you guys are out looking for your jobs, I would really start with what companies are good and what people are good. Find people that you have confidence in. And I've lived my whole career under the philosophy of, if I follow those two things, compensation's going to follow, and it always has. So, when you get out, honestly, your first job, you're probably not going to have a lot of room to negotiate a whole heck of a lot. And what Nancy talked about, if it's moving expenses or PTO, time off, those kinds of things, those are things you can probably tweak around. But I would start with, is this a company that I like? Is it an industry that I like? Am I going to be challenged? And do I think the people I'm interviewing with are people I can trust? And if you check both those boxes, you're going to be fine. So that's where I would kind of start my search. The other part I wanted to touch on is sort of that follow-up. So now you've got that job. I want to go back to what got you that job, and that is, you're probably going to have networked. So you heard Jordan and everybody else earlier talk about networking and how important that is. And I'm a great example of, I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't got lucky and networked very early in my career. So when you get that job, follow up with the people that helped you. It drives me nuts when I meet somebody and I've opened, 3 doors for them to go interview. And then I never hear, did you get a job somewhere? Did that meeting with that person lead you to another door? So follow up, send that person a note, give them an email, give them a call and go, hey, I want to thank you. That was a great interview I had, and geez, Jill was phenomenal. And she didn't have anything, but she got me connected with this person, and they were great, and ultimately it led to this job, and I just wanted to give you my new contact information. Now I'm working for Carrie, and I'm in Seattle, and then keep me posted. If you've built that network, use that network, because now you've got a fan. They helped you get through a door, and keep them posted, because they may hear of a even better job for your next one. So kind of do that follow up. And then I'm going to go a little off script. Sorry, Jennifer, but I'm going to go a little off script and just go back and hit a few of the other pieces. I would start with C of I, and I think you've heard that from everybody that's talked up here. But man, use the C of I network and start with Jennifer. Start with all the resources you've got here. This is awesome. I mean, I saw people sitting around with all of these great people that are here today that are alums, or Nancy, who's got positions that are helpful to you, and so hats off to you for taking advantage of that. But think a little broader. Jim and I took a group of, I think, 11 students over to a Rotary Club meeting in Boise. Natasha was one of them. Natasha, I don't want to speak for her, but maybe she loved it, maybe she didn't love it. But she got to sit at a table with, 4 or 5 people of a variety of fields in Boise for an hour and a half. And what great exposure for her. And, that's one where you're going, okay, great, I'm going to go meet some people at a Rotary event, big deal. Free lunch, not bad, but beyond that, use that as an opportunity. So if you're sitting here and, Josh is in his freshman year, Kyle's in his sophomore year, and you're going, okay, how am I ever going to get connected? Well, I'll tell you what, look for opportunities like this. You've got six of us up here that now you've got a couple more network spots. Let me know, let Jim know, and go, hey, if you're ever going out in a community event, love to go. We're going to have students out as often as we can, because you guys honestly sell the college better than I can, better than Jim can, better than Nancy can. So we're going to be looking for opportunities to have you guys out in the community. Just let us know. Go, hey, if you're ever going, don't know if it'll work, love to go. And now use that opportunity. You're going to meet 5, 10 other people, and start taking advantage of it. And start earlier. I was a terrible example. I waited till my senior year, quite a ways into quite a ways into my senior year before I kind of started the process. So you guys that are freshmen, sophomore, juniors, start using it now. And the other thing to do is just do informational interviews. So, if you call me up and say, hey, I'm interested in, whatever, accounting, don't necessarily use me to find you a job. Use me to find you 3 other people that you can meet with and talk to. And like everybody said, you don't have to buy those people lunch or us lunch. Just say, hey, can I come by your office? Doug Brigham mentioned you might be a great resource for me, and I'd love to come by and just find out what you do. And then it's so simple. I mean, all you do is go, tell me your story. I mean, to me, that ought to be your first question in an informational interview. Tell me your story. And, all of us have some egos, and, whether we admit it or not, we like to hear our story. And so, you start with that, and before you know it, they've told you, hey, here's what happened to me in college, here's what I do, and now you've got them going. They're engaged in the interview. They're engaged in the process, and then you can start to move that to, okay, what can I do? How can I, follow in your footsteps, or who else should I talk to? So start to network.
I think getting a job today is really about the networking. So it may not be the person that you talk to today or tomorrow, but they may hear of somebody that then connects you. So as much as you can, get out and meet people. Inquire.
And then also after you get into the workforce, and even before that, and I can't remember who, it was Carrie, I can't remember who said volunteer, but 2 things for me. Right out of college, my mother-in-law was running the National Alumni Board for the college, and she drugged me kicking and screaming into National Alumni Board meetings. I had 0 interest. I had just gotten out of college. I'm like, oh man, last thing I want to do. And we'd go over and meet in the president's house. It was actually the alumni house at that time, but we'd meet over there. And first meeting, I just was rolling my eyes, and by about the 3rd meeting, I went, wait a minute, these are great people, great stories, and a wide range of backgrounds, and I loved it. The second thing I did, also not necessarily my plan, but somebody asked me to be on a finance committee at the YMCA. And this was my first or second year out of college, I think. And lo and behold, who did I meet but Jim Everett? And now, 25 years later, where that has led the 2 of us on a pretty wide, winding path, but we came back together, and I met so many other people as a result of that. And that wasn't anything that, I was getting paid to do. It was just a volunteer thing, and my ulterior motive may have been to connect with people, but it was a lot of fun. You get out in the community, you meet people, you learn things. So I'd really encourage you to be that. I'm kind of bouncing around, and I apologize, but that's the prerogative, I guess, of a president, right? Sally, you can go wherever you want now. The other one I would tell you is, once again, you get that first job, don't worry if it's not the job you want. If you're a math major and you go into Zoot and, all they've got is the front desk, but you think, you know what, man, that Jordan knocked it out of the park. I'd love to work for those guys. Take it. Man, take it. Now you're in the door. How hard is it to get in the door somewhere? Find those companies you want to be at, get in the door, and then leverage that. Then you're a known commodity. And a pet peeve, and I'm sure everybody here would say the same thing, at least I think, is, and somebody mentioned it, be great at the job you're in. Gavin's there, and he's like, you know what, I don't want to be the front desk person. And he's like, I'm smarter than those guys that are doing the quant stuff back there, and they got me out front, and I hate it. Well, that's going to be a pretty self-fulfilling prophecy. You're not going to move anywhere except out the door. And there's nothing worse than somebody that comes in and sits down with me and says, I don't get it. Why am I not that? And, you look back at them and go, well, are you the best you can be at what you're currently doing? And, you know, the good ones will take that and go, you're right, you know what, I've got to be better at what I'm doing today. And so whatever it is you're doing, be the best you can be, because that's what's going to open up those next doors. If that makes sense.
Can I take just 1 second? Totally unplanned, but we often hear from young alumni who will, when we meet them in the first year or 2 or 3, and they'll say, you know, I just don't feel like I've made it yet. Like maybe I can't come back to alumni events, or maybe not come back to the campus because I just don't feel like I have that dream job yet. And I just would like to take some of that pressure off, that exactly as you said, you're not necessarily in that first year or 2 going to have the job. And nobody is expecting you to necessarily do that. It really is finding a path and then being great at what you're doing in that moment. So we hear that. It was kind of a surprise to us to hear that a bit. So I just want to.
And sometimes you have to, you aren't sure until you get into that job. Maybe it's what your major is, maybe isn't what your major is, but you get in and you try it, and then you figure out over time, what do I really want to do? And that's normal. And getting that first job teaches you how to be a good employee. It gives you the opportunity to master something, and then start looking for what else. What can I add on this? Or if you're in a company that is the right company, just maybe not the right job, do your job well, but look for opportunities to get experience, or go talk to that person in the job that you want to be in. How do I get there from here?
It took me 5 years to really figure out that HR was my calling. And partly because at that point I'd only really been in HR officially for about 2 years in kind of a generalist role. But, you know, even 5 years out, you know, I got a master's degree in higher ed administration because, again, I had that itch to work in higher ed. And it still took me another 2 years, because when you end up in a place like Ann Arbor, Michigan, and you have University of Michigan right down the road, it's so appealing to say, hey, I want to go work for, you know, for Big Blue over here. But, you know, so in reference to Sally's point of feeling like you made it, heck, I've been out of college now 14 years, and yes, I'll admit, I have a great title, a great position, I'm very happy with what I do, but it feels like yesterday that I was here, so I don't necessarily feel like I've matured, right, to the point where I'm like, yeah, I'm, you know, in that position. So it takes time, and not, you know, those 5 years, if I had job hopped, you know, 4 or 5 different times, right, then where am I at that point? I'm still at square one. And you've got to be able to kind of take the opportunities that you do have, whether it is a front desk position or something like that, and just, you know, find that silver lining, be the best employee. You can be the same example with the first 7 jobs concept, right? Yeah, you may be cleaning toilets, but what did you do to, you know, be the best darn toilet cleaner that you could be, right? And sharing those examples about those things will mean something to somebody when you're trying to at least start out. Because they know that you have to be calibrated to be an employee for the most part. And that's one of the risks that we take in hiring an entry level employee too, is, you know, hey, we're gonna have to, you know, give you the first 6 months, first 2 years to really work out some of those, you know, maybe bad habits and sort of things. So.
Yeah, and tying in your point into negotiation, you know, I have one of my best friends who works in HR, and he worked at me, and he's since moved on. But some of the best advice he ever gave me was when your manager asks you where you want to be, if you're already hired, where you want to be salary-wise, or if somebody interviewing you asks you where you want to be salary-wise, or hey, what can we offer you? They may very well only be able to offer you 35 and you want to be at 50, right? But let's say, look guys, I'm at 50, or I want to be at 50. I will take 35, but I need X amount of steps, I need career pathing, I need this to get me to 50. Here are some of the things I've identified in my research of this position, of the job market. Here are a few things I feel like I can implement to help get me there. I may not be at 50 on day one, but can absolutely be your best self on day one at 35. Take the knowledge, implement it, and continue to better yourself to get yourself to 50. I love that advice that my buddy gave me, and you know, I'll continue to utilize it. I haven't found my dream job. I love digital marketing, but you bet I'm going to you guys can buy into one concept when you guys leave today that we've all spoken to, each one of us has kind of alluded to something fell in my lap or something happened by chance or we had a little bit of luck. Buy into that because it happens. It's real. It's something that will actually happen. Be patient with it. Do your best that you can in networking and doing the research and being the best self you can. Even as a student looking for a job, be your best self in that job by gaining the knowledge of what job descriptions are and utilizing that to negotiate, put your best self on paper, and then believe in chance. Because, again, if you network with the correct people like us, that spider web happens, and by chance you might just get it. So.
I'll add quickly one more thing, the kind of this telling your own story, right? I mean, that's, I bet you probably at least half of you in this room have a very good story of how you ended up at the College of Idaho. And likely also wasn't that College of Idaho was your first choice since you were 5 years old that you wanted to come to either, right? So there can be some value in being able to craft that story to, again, give people insight into who you are, whether that leads to a salary negotiation or getting the job offer or even just proving that you're a good employee. That can all, all of that is relevant and it shapes who you are, and you need to share that so that people can get that insight into you. They want to see that you're real.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue maybe to my last comment, and it hit on it with Mr. Gigray here, talking about liberal arts majors. So you guys have a wonderful education coming from the College of Idaho. One of the things you're going to face is, whatever job you are, he's a philosophy major. So I don't know what kind of jobs he's looking for, but let's say he's going after a job and it's a fairly straightforward whatever accounting job or something like that where there's a fairly specific skill set. Sell your breadth of education. Okay, as a hiring manager, I can tell you with very few exceptions, most jobs you're hiring for initially out of college, you're going to learn so much of what you need to know on the job. And so I'm interviewing for person and fit, and I'm interviewing for who do I think has the drive, and I mean, there's a minimum level of competence I need, but who has that drive, who's got that personality, who's getting after it in the interview and prepared for it, that's who I'm going to choose. So when you go into those interviews, don't go in going, yeah, I know I don't have as much experience as you probably want. I really haven't done that. Sell what you've done, and that is you've got this breadth of knowledge. You've got this great education, and not to badmouth, a Boise State or a state school, but most of the people you're going to be competing against have, if they're in a very narrow, they probably haven't been outside let's say the business building for the last 3 years. Every class they took was around that. In the meantime, you've been out there, you've been studying, the classics, or you've been, studying art, and you've got this wonderful broad view. Maybe you did study abroad. Boy, work every single one of those into your self-story. I mean, build your self-story. Come in ready to, sell yourself and how, the experience you've had, and maybe you did a study abroad and you lost your passport, something like that. And what'd you do? Well, boy, I had to go, I went to the consulate in Egypt and yeah, you can say it as basic as that, or you can say, wow, it was amazing, So here I am, I'm in Cairo, and I've lost my passport, and so I'm thinking, okay, where do I go? And I went into this spot, and I found this local, and make the story, tell the story, and show how you had to solve something in a high-stress environment. I've never lost my passport, by the way. I have been to Cairo, but I've never lost my passport there. But, build those, think of what you've done in college where you had to solve things, where you had to bring a group together. Maybe you had to help out with an event like this. And, what did it take? Well, I had to plan it, and, something went wrong, and here's how we fixed it on the fly. Sell that ability to have critical thinking. That's what employers want. That's what we're buying. And, come in prepared. Lots of questions. Do your research. I will never hire anybody. It drives me absolutely batty when you go in, okay, tell me about yourself, and they do that. Everybody's ready for that question, and they'll ask, okay, tell me about yourself, and you do that, and then you go, okay, well, do you have questions? No, I think you've answered everything. I'm done right then, because that tells me you didn't care enough to even look up, how easy is it in the digital age to find out stuff about a company? I mean, if you can't do that minimum level, I'm not wasting any time on you because you don't care. So.
Then if I can add it on to that, it's also representative of what you're going to be like as an employee. So if I'm a manager and I like to be able to give out projects and have you be the lead, I don't want to be the person that continually comes and follows up and says, where are you at on this? So if you don't ask a question in an interview, when I'm giving you that guidance, are you going to ask questions of me to clarify the ultimate objective of that project? So I'm like you, Doug. You don't ask questions, you're not in the final cut.
Great. Anything else you'd add, Nancy?
Go to CEL. Practice your interviews when they offer you that experience. Go work on your resume. Use the sheets that are over on that back table. Go out to their website. Figure out what your skills are. Figure out what the action verbs are. Figure out how to translate what you've done in your clubs that you belong to, your fraternities, sororities, your athletic teams, your academic. We have Math Club. We had the Pi Day. How you organize that. How do you translate that so that an employer looks at that and goes, wow. Talk about your education. You're unique here at the College of Idaho because you have a major and 3 minors. That, as he said, that depth makes you much more marketable than someone like me who got a degree at Boise State. I never left the business building. What I had on my side is that I worked full-time at the same time, so I had work experience that complemented, but you've got much more than that here, so use that to your advantage. Because that's what's going to help you negotiate. It's going to get you in the door, get you for the interview, and then help you negotiate.
Yeah, talk to Sally's office. I mean, if you're
Network.
going to be moving to Seattle and that's where your dream job is, Sally can go, hey, I know Carrie's, working there, and we'll get you lined up. Carrie may not be remotely close to the field you want, but now you've got somewhere to start. And we've got alumni everywhere, and I guarantee you 9 out of 10 of those alumni will absolutely take your call, and they'll absolutely meet with you. They may not have a job, but they'll be a connecting point for you.
They have a really cool new website. You can get a mentor. This is an alumni that says, I want to work with a C of I student or graduate. Industry specific, location specific, they're out there. They want to connect. They want to help you be successful.
Does anybody have any questions? We have most of the panel still here. Does anybody have any questions that you kind of have on pause right now? Frank?
One of the big things that is stressed is like the cover letter as a way to tell your story. But I know that my reaction to the cover letter is, where do I even begin? Can I use a form cover letter? It just seems like a whole bunch of unnecessary stuff almost.
One moment here. Crafting a cover letter. CEL can help you right here. Really succinct. They'll practice. They'll ask you questions. I'm open. Come see me in the HR office. I'll talk to you about it. I'll look at what you've drafted. Get a couple of opinions. We're open to that.
At the end of the day, that's an opportunity to connect your background with the job or the company, right? And so, again, not without rehashing everything that you already have in your resume, but pull out a couple of things on the job to still provide some of that depth. But, you know, don't also, I get plenty of cover letters that are just a 4-sentence thing. I'm applying for this position. Thank
And you know
for
that they
this
sent those to
consideration.
20 different companies.
And yeah, and take the time to actually rework the cover letter for each specific company. There may be some content you can reuse later, but obviously make sure you're really reworking that, at least that first paragraph, and not the whole thing, to make sure it's specific for that job and specific for that company. I mean, talk about attention to detail, right? Sometimes you get cover letters where
To another company?
the wrong position or the wrong company. I mean, that's, kiss of death, right? I mean, so don't make those mistakes. But assuming none of you will make those mistakes, right? Take that opportunity to really, delve into it, fill up the page without stretching the margins so far to the edge. But just use it to connect the things together. Because from your resume, and again, with limited work experience too, it's hard to get a kind of a full picture of who you are. I'll know what you're, the working you, but I won't know the real you. So what drives you?
What's your interest?
Well, that's where you can throw in your research. If you saw on their website that, hey, this company's been recognized as one of the top places to work in Montana, 3 years running, mention that. Boy, I was really, I'm passionate about culture in the workplace, and I saw you've recently been named that again. Fantastic. Sounds like a company I'd love to be part of. It's 3 sentences, done, doesn't take up a lot of room. Do something that shows you're different.
I always talk about it like in terms of the how and the why. Your resume is going to be your how, right? Those are your stats. Those are things that are quantifiable, they're verifiable. Those are the how you fit. But the why you fit is your cover letter. That's the tying it together and communicating to the employee or the employer is, I fit for you because, and it's the why you should hire me. So think of it in those two kind of realms. Stats get to live on one side, very distinct, put it on a clean, clear resume, but your cover letter is going to be unique for you, and that's your why you're selling yourself in your cover letter.
I'll just throw out,
Sports analogy, right? It's the box score. Your resume is the box score.
Yep.
But the cover letter is the actual newspaper article. And somebody who was watching the game was able to recap that for you and actually tell you and paint that picture in your mind of what happened.
I'll just throw out one other thing. If you're looking at a specific company and you're just dying to get an interview or get into that company, and you're pinging the HR person and you're not getting responses anywhere, call the president's office. I guarantee you, again, 9 out of 10, president's office. You may not get to the president, but they will do something with that call. If you call up, Frank calls up when I was at Title I and says, hey, I am really interested in Title I. All I want to know is I just want to sit down with somebody, anybody, that I can just get an informational 5 minutes. I'd love it to be you, Doug, but if you can't, can you set me up with somebody? Every president, almost without pause, will do something with that. They may shoot it down to the HR person and say, you call them back, but you're going to get somewhere. So don't be shy about that.
So as an underclassman, planning to go to grad school, formulating curriculum, a CV, do you think it'd be a good idea as well to send that out to potential schools to be hey, how can I be a more well-rounded applicant? Could that also work for applying to a job? I know that there isn't a position right now currently, but how can I strengthen myself to one day get this dream position?
My 2 cents would be maybe less with sending them that and more with getting a hold of somebody and going in, and then maybe as you go in, once you have that meeting set up, send it to them in advance and say, hey, I know we're meeting on Friday, it's Wednesday, here's my draft CV, would love just, your 2 cents on what am I missing, something like that. I don't know.
I'm going to ask Jennifer kind of to respond a little bit to that, but I'm also thinking, use your faculty.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are connected. They have that connection to the grad school, can tell you what's important. Do you have anything else to add from the CEL standpoint on that?
Well, I like you said about actually outreach to the person, the individual, to make it either email or an opportunity to speak to them directly, because that's where you're going to get feedback in a non-formal review my CV way.
Yeah.
But you can ask the same questions, but make more of a personal connect. So I tell students that basically continuing my education from a major to the direct, like, master's degree program, I don't kind of qualify, but I know my transcripts show that I do. You know, how do I express that? And my response to that is there's a person like myself in every other school, right? So there's somebody that's in charge of that master's program at the institution that you're wanting to go to. It's not necessarily the one that's going to screen and admit you in, but they can help you identify if you meet the basic, you know, the base characteristics or the qualifications. You can start a rapport with that individual. It could be by email, by phone, but just outreach and ask. Then you can go that step further and look at their faculty. Check their research, check who the faculty is on staff there that you might want to be thinking about a grad assistantship with. Reach out to them in that same regard, but now you're going to know what things that you feel that you're trying to compensate for and try to share by what coursework you've taken. Communicate that directly to the faculty. So it's just an exchange. It's a personal exchange, not just a here's my CV. Can you tell me what I'm missing? Start from the ground up with them. I think that would be my response.
Don't go into that blind. Like kind of what we had touched on earlier is make sure you're doing your due diligence to figure out what differentiates these two master's programs from one another. Where do you fill the gaps here? Where don't you fill the gaps here? Figure that out, and then compile that information and start that report, start that communication with your expectations. This is what I'm gathering from what you guys accomplished in the master's program, where I do feel like my skill sets fit in. Can you give me a little bit more insight into that?
And start early. So start early. And I might have an example come in my head without giving away the person's name. We had a student that graduated 2 years ago that wanted to go into material science at Boise State. We don't have a material science degree here. We don't have an engineering degree here. But he had all the background with physics and math. He knew what he needed to do to get into. So he talked with the professors and asked them, what coursework would you be looking at my transcript and seeing that I'm missing? He had independent studies created here on campus to incorporate in that knowledge that now he can express in his cover letter and his application to say, I might not have the class on my transcript, but my independent study included the information that you were deeming to be necessary to qualify me to interview with a divinity. So knowing what you need, that you think that you might be missing, you probably have it. It's just not framed for the title of the class. So sell yourself in that regard and start early, and then you have more time to make that happen. And use your faculty to help you collaborate.
Do internships help with that as well?
Absolutely.
Or research, like summer research that you can do on campus here?
Because again, you're incorporating in what they're assuming that some people are coming from another institution, they're just coming because of the curriculum. So you kind of design it yourself. And internships do just that. And so if you find the right internship that's got the same skill building opportunities for you, you're being able to put on your resume and your application if you've had it, you've experienced it. But definitely your faculty can help with that, and they're great with that concept of independent study and independent research.
So you can see like where general resume and a general cover letter wouldn't work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like we hashed, you gotta tailor everything to that job. And it takes time, but it doesn't. You gotta sit down and start early in your dorm room, set aside a couple hours to really, if you had an accomplishment that day, kind of preparing your resume that we talked about, really, you should have a general resume that might be 5 pages long on your computer, but.
And you can
that's
tailor it.
necessarily you start extracting to start really drilling down specificity to a position. You know, if you have something that really made you smile that day because you accomplished, you know, you grew your bank account by 25%, document it, write it down. And that way, in 8 years' time, when you are applying for a job, you can extract that. You don't have to think back. I'm the worst at like thinking back at like specific examples, but if you write it down, you know, it's just like why you guys are writing notes right now, so you can refer back to them.
We can continue with some extra questions, but as you know, you've been being videotaped right now. This is great because we're going to be able to then archive and document that for other students that may have been not able to attend today, but also for our alumni that have graduated that are out there that might be still looking to help themselves with these kind of questions with insights. So we're running out of tape, so she's asking if we can wrap up. So we're going to do the formality of it, but for sure, you know, as we exit out, we'll be here for questions as well.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.